Hello students, today's class is about green chemistry. I am V. Ragasuma here to present about the green chemistry from Government Degree College, Bhadrachalam. Green chemistry brought about a great revolution in the medical field, agriculture, in the discovery of plastics, dyes, and several other chemicals. It has helped the human beings in increasing their life expectancy and other living standards. At the same time, discoveries inventions created several side effects like the land, water, air pollutions. The usage of toxic substances in the industries and the production of hazardous waste, everything has demanded the need for green chemistry by 1950s. So, what is green chemistry? Green chemistry you can define as environmentally benign. It's nothing but gentle, not harmful, not malignant. Science for chemical synthesis. Green chemistry is environmentally benign, gentle, harmful, or not malignant, not harmful, not malignant science for chemical synthesis is called green chemistry. So the need is whether it is on the large scale or just in the laboratory scale. The synthesis should be with no or minimum byproducts that pollute the atmosphere. So I'm giving you the need of green chemistry, whether it is on the large scale or just in the laboratory scale. The synthesis should be with no products or minimum byproducts. These pollute the atmosphere. Now we'll see. Here are some incidents. It is a published. It is the published incident from the past few decades. Cuyahoga River in Ohio, which has become polluted with chemicals and caught fire. See, so many chemicals are being dumped in this river, and later on it has caught fire. See, a river, this river catching a fire, it's a strange thing. And one more example we'll see. Familiar examples I'm telling. One is the worldwide, and one is within India I'm giving you. Bhopal gas tragedy, plant accident in the Bhopal in India. It has released methyl isocyanate. Nearly 4,000 people died. Why all this is taking place? It is because of the harmful chemicals. It is due to the toxic substances, use of the toxic substances. So in the industries has given the hazardous disaster for us. So Paulus Anastas is the father of green chemistry. It is the design of the chemical products and processes that reduce or eliminate the use or generation of the hazardous substances. Actually, green chemistry is about waste minimization at source. That means, see, when you produce some chemical reactions nowadays, so much is required for us. So that waste minimization at source is done by the green chemistry. And usage of the catalyst in place of reagents is best thing for the green chemistry. According to green chemistry, the green chemistry it is about the waste minimization at source, the reactants, and usage of the catalyst in place of reagents. So you know what is a catalyst? Catalyst which enhances the reaction but doesn't participate. It doesn't undergo any chemical reaction is called catalyst. Usage of not, see if at all a catalyst we are not using and the reagent is must, then we have to use a non-toxic reagent. Use of renewable resources. So renewable resources are less hazardous for us. Improved atom efficiency. Improved atom efficiency. It shouldn't go with waste. 100% that should be utilized. Use of solvent-free or recyclable environmental benign solvent systems. use of the solvent free, even the solvent may cause some damage to the environment. So we have to use such type of chemical reactions where the reagents are less or non-toxic and solvents are free or recyclable environmentally benign solvent systems. You know, benign. It's not harmful for us. Benign, it's gentle and non-malignant for us. That is called benign solvent systems. Now, green chemistry is also known as environmentally benign chemistry and sustainable chemistry. Paulus Anastas, previously I told you the father of green chemistry, and John Werner, who defined green chemistry as design of chemical products processes which reduce or eliminate the use or generation of hazardous substances. Chemical developments also bring new environmental problems and harmful unexpected side effects. These result in the need for greener chemical products. Green chemistry looks at pollution prevention on the molecular scale is extremely important area of chemistry. Due to the importance of the chemistry in our world today, it is 100% very important, but that should be in a green way. And implications it can show on our own importance in chemistry in our own world today, and its implications can show our environment. So green chemistry is the best. So the green chemistry program supports the invention of more environmentally friendly chemical processes which reduce or even eliminate the generation of hazardous substances. Anastas and Warner formulated 12 principles. Father of chemistry and Warner. They have formulated 12 principles of green chemistry in 1998. These serve as a guidelines for chemists seeking to lower the ecological footprint of the chemicals they produce and the processes by which chemicals are made. The invention, design, and application of chemical products and processes to reduce or to eliminate the use and generation of hazardous substances. So, these 12 principles govern the these 12 principles govern invention, design, application of chemical products and processes to reduce or to eliminate the use and generation of hazardous substances. So, as I have told you, green chemistry it is about the waste minimization at the source. I'm repeating a use of the catalyst in place of the reagents. Using, if at all, a reagent is must, it should be non-toxic reagent. We have to use the renewable resources. Improved atom efficiency should be there. And solvent-free, recyclable, environmental benign solvent system should be used. Now let us have a look on to the 12 principles. The principles of the green chemistry, first one is prevention. Prevention, I'm telling you, prevention or minimization of prevention means prevention or minimization of waste and or byproducts. Prevention or minimization of waste and the byproducts minimization. Okay, so it is better to prevent waste than to treat. Okay, so we have to avoid the waste or the byproducts than to treat them. Again, the waste coming, again treating the waste. Why all these? Will prevent that waste and to treat or clean up waste after it has been created. Here, the chemical process, no waste. Here, instead of this waste, the toxic ones, and treating a chemical process with no waste is better one. The synthesis of chemical product, yet the synthesis of a chemical compound should give as far as possible no waste or no byproduct at all. This helps in decrease of the production cost and since generally The treatment and the disposal of the waste also adds to the overall production cost. Even the cost gets reduced. Again, treating the waste, again the cost may increase. The unreacted substances become waste. These wastes or the byproducts may pollute the environment. These pollute the environment. Again, treating them is again costly. So, decrease of the production of cost, the treatment and disposal also adds to the overall production cost. So, prevention, minimization of waste or the byproducts is better to do for a chemical process. Now, the second principle of the green chemistry, atom economy. Synthetic methods should be designed to maximize the incorporation of all materials used in the process into the final product. Synthetic methods should be designed to maximize the incorporation of all materials used in the process into final product. So percent yield of the product should be maximum. Percent yield atom economy should be maximum. So the percent yield or percent atom economy is equal to molecular weight of the desired product by molecular weight of all reactants into 100. So there you can get the percent of the economy. So all the synthetic process should be designed to maximize the incorporation of all materials used in the process for the final product. In case if it is the maximum, it is not used, then if it is not used to the maximum extent, that may lead to the waste production or the byproduct production. So therefore, we have to see the atom economy should be 100% usage of the economy. Here, for instance, for example, I'm giving you allyl phenyl ether. Let us consider some common reactions like rearrangement reactions. Rearrangement, it gets rearranged with no byproducts. Addition also, complete addition takes place with no byproducts. Atom is 100% utilized, even for the substitutions, eliminations to find out. These are atom economical reactions. Now let us see an example. This is a rearrangement reaction, allyl phenyl ether. So this is allyl group from here, the arrow, here you can see the cursor. From this point you're having the allyl. Okay, this is phenyl. So between this aryl group and this allyl group, you are having O bond, that is ether. So allyl phenyl ether at 200 degrees. If you treat, what happens is your reaction, the hydrogen, it's, see one here, almost the bond is breaking at this position and this bond is getting added here and hydrogen it adds here. So orthoallyl phenol is formed. This is a rearrangement reaction. Here you can see 100% atom economy. There is no wastage of the atoms. There is no byproduct or the waste formation. The reaction is broken down here. Hydrogen is added here and this bond is added here. So you'll be getting orthoallyl phenol. Now we'll go for the next. This Diels-Alder reaction, a best example. This is an addition reaction. Diels-Alder reaction. Diene is added to the dienophile. Example, butadiene and ethene. Here this, in this butadiene, the 4 carbon compound butane, and here 2 double bonds are there, diene. The double bond is added to this carbon and this double bond is added to this carbon. This double bond is shifted here. So you can see 6 carbons in the resources, this material reactants, and the product formed is cyclohexene. The product formed is cyclohexene. So here again 6 carbons with 1 double bond. There is no wastage of the atoms. 100% atom economy we can see. So this is what we have to consider. 100% atom economy should be there with no wastage. Now let us go for the next principle. The third principle. Principles of green chemistry. The third principle is less hazardous chemical synthesis should be explained. Here, so less hazardous, the name itself you can understand, the toxic substances should be used during the chemical synthesis. So less prevention or minimization of the hazardous products. Prevention or minimization of the hazardous products. Wherever practicable, synthetic methods should be designed to use and generate the substances that possess little or no toxicity to the people or the environment. Wherever practicable, synthetic methods should be designed to use and generate substances that possess little or no toxicity to the people and the environment. Okay, so this prevention and minimization of hazardous products, this process is basic idea of the green chemistry. The toxic or the environmentally harmful effects of the hazardous products are controlled by the workers by wearing protective clothing and using masks. I'm repeating. So the basic the in the this process is the basic idea of green chemistry and the toxic or environmentally harmful effects of the hazardous products can be controlled for the workers by wearing protective clothes, using masks, using engineering control methods. And all these processes are expensive. A new scientific answer should come overcome these defects is essential. We are talking about the green chemistry, but still that has to come into practice. The polystyrene, recently we have seen in Andhra Pradesh, the polystyrene leakage in the polymer industry that has led to great hazards. So sometimes it is inevitable, but we have to avoid that product instead. The product should be avoided instead to minimize so that this toxic substances doesn't come into the environment. Such type of chemical reactions should be avoided. Such type of reactants should be avoided. These are dangerous for the people. So for the working people, that can be dangerous, or if there is leakage for the people residing nearby, will be dangerous. So such type of chemicals and industries should be banned. Now the fourth principle for the green chemistry, designing safer chemicals. Yeah, I've told you just now. Designing safer chemicals. Chemicals products should be designed to effect their desired function while minimizing their toxicity. Chemical. So recently, even the ammonium nitrate blast of the complete city, Lebanon, the complete city was destroyed. See, so we have to use a safer chemical, ammonium nitrate, putting in the godowns that has exploded. The whole city has gone into damage. So we have to use safer chemicals. Chemical products should be designed to effect their desired function while minimizing their toxicity. Okay, so energy utilization for the synthesis. Energy requirement should be minimum as possible. And for exothermic process, cooling is very important. Finally, the product should be as pure as possible. Otherwise, methods like distillation, recrystallization should be used for the purification of the product required. More energy and it adds to the cost of the production. Now, and the next one is the fifth principle, use of the renewable feedstock. So designing safer chemical for same use. See, designing safer chemical for same use. So here the product should be safe to carry and use. Again, for example, I can tell you thalidomide, it has been used for lessening the efforts of nausea and vomiting during pregnancy. But children born to those women possessed defects like deformed or even missing limbs, and thereby the drug thalidomide was banned from use. Any new drug that has to be used must be thoroughly tested before use and confirmation of no side effects. Latest technology also helps to the great extent for this field. So chemists, they came out with a special molecular structure to the drug that couldn't be harmful. And moreover, renewable sources, again, that would be used. A raw material or a feedstock should be renewable rather than depleting whenever technical and economical practicable comes. Practicable. Okay, the raw material or the feedstock should be renewable. If that is stocked to the renewable raw material, that should be renewed rather than depleting. Don't throw it. That should be renewable. And so whenever technically and economically, if that is practicable, you have to see for the renewable feedstock. This is the fifth one. Now, the principle of green chemistry, the sixth one, is safer solvents and auxiliaries should be employed. So, selection of the solvent used in the reaction. Selection of solvent used in the reaction. So, how should be the selection? The safer solvents and the auxiliaries. The use of auxiliary substance, example, solvents or the separation agents, should be made unnecessary whenever possible and incumbent when used. Water, the best solvent, should be used as the solvent in the chemistry process, in the synthesis process, in the manufacture process. If water is not usable, then eco-friendly solvents like the supercritical carbon dioxide, the best one, or the ionic solvents. As far as the eco-friendly solvents like supercritical carbon dioxide or the ionics. And most possibly, the synthesis should be carried out without solvent. If possible, without solvents, that should be done. If that is inevitable, then eco-friendly should be employed. So now, if water doesn't cause any environmental pollution, health hazard. In this context, I have told you supercritical liquids like carbon dioxide, liquids important than the pollution causing, a gases, liquid solvent. If no solvent is there, their vapors are harmful. If that are the solvents are employed to human health and the environment. Sometimes the selection of immobile solvent is advantageous. Sometimes if this can be achieved by binding the solvent molecules to polymer chain. Polymer solvents are also usable. Now, coming to the safer solvents, better avoid the solvents. If it is inevitable, go for the safer solvents. Now, coming to the next point, designing safer chemicals. So, how you design the chemical product should be designed to effect their desired function while minimizing their toxicity. Chemical products should be designed to effect their desired function while minimizing their toxicity. Let us go for the green chemistry, the safer previous examples. In the olden days, initially gasoline, kerosene, the eco-friendly solvents were used. See, for dry cleaning, nowadays we give clothes dry cleaning. Gasoline and the kerosene were used previously. Chlorinated solvents are now used. These chlorofluorocarbons are highly harmful to the environment. So, what you have to do is initially the gasoline, how we use the kerosene, the same type of solvents should be employed. Same type of chemicals should be employed for the chemical process for the our purpose. Chlorinated solvent should be avoided. Supercritical liquid carbon dioxide, that's the best solvent which can be used. And one more example I'm telling you, lead pollution has been decreased. Why? Nowadays it has decreased lead toxicity because we have replaced tetraethyl lead with less toxic additives. So TEL, the anti-knocking agent, tetraethyl lead with toxic additives. So lead-free gasoline is used. Lead-free gasoline, such as methyl tetrabutyl. Here, a ether is used. Methyl tertiary butyl ether in place of TEL. In place of TEL, we are using. In place of TEL, we are using methyl tertiary butyl ether. Next principle, the green chemistry principle, design for the energy efficiency should be employed. Energy requirements, design for the energy efficiency. Energy requirements for chemical process should be recognized for their environmental and the economic impacts and should be minimized If possible, synthetic methods should be conducted to the ambient temperature and pressure instead of using the energy requirements. This high energy is again a dangerous thing. Usage, energy utilization for the synthesis. The the energy utilization requirement should be minimized as minimum as possible. For exothermic process, cooling is important. Final product should be as pure as possible. Otherwise, we have to, otherwise, methods like distillation, recrystallization, methods like distillation, recrystallization should be used. Usage for the purification of the product require more energy and it adds to the cost of the production. So therefore, we have to generally go for the energy requirement for the chemical process should be recognized for their environment and economical impact should be minimized. So synthetic methods should be conducted at the ambient temperature and pressure. So how we can achieve is by using the enzymes, the natural catalysts and the catalyst. So by using avoiding the reagents, usage of the catalyst, enzymes, this can be achieved. Use of the microorganisms for organic synthesis and use of renewable materials can also be used for the energy efficiency. So energy requirement should be as minimum as possible. If it is exothermic reaction, the cooling should be most important point which we have to remember. So once, if a reaction, high energy utilization should be about, if it is an exothermic process, cooling is important. Final product should be pure. So distillation and crystallization should be done. So used for the purification of the product require more energy. Okay. Next, let us see the example. Polylactic acid, PL. Polylactic acid for plastic production. Polylactic acid, PLA, for plastic production, we'll see. See here, corn is converted into starch, unrefined dextrose, fermentation, on fermentation process. So corn, starch, unrefined dextrose. Corn gives rise to starch and the starch will give you the dextrose, unrefined. And on fermentation of the dextrose, lactic acid is produced. This lactic acid again gives monomer production and this again gives lactide. Again this lactide polymer production you'll get. This polymer production will give you PLA, okay, polylactic acid. And this polylactic acid on modification, polymer modification if you do, you can go for different polymer grades. Now what is polymer? It has been inevitable. So instead of using that chemicals from the corn, you can go for the polymer production. So different grades of the polymer is prepared, fiber is prepared, films can be prepared, thermoforming, bottles, you can see, wovens, okay, and non-woven products, etc. Many products can be done, can be prepared using the modified polymer. So this is the actual raw materials from the corn. So this is biologically friendly process. So environmentally green chemistry favorable process. Coming to the next principle of the green chemistry, we have to reduce the derivatives. Unnecessary derivatization and use of the blocking groups, okay, and protection, deprotection, all these, it's nothing but a wastage of the chemical. And see, not only the cost, even along with the cost for us, along with the cost, it is expensive and it is even harmful for the environment. So temporary modification of the physical chemical process is more better. Usage of the blocking groups, protecting, deprotecting, and the temporary modification of the physical chemical process. This all comes under the unnecessary derivatization. We have to reduce this derivatization. This should be minimized or avoided if possible, because such steps require additional reagents and can generate waste, and even that will become costly for us. So such steps of the additional reagents should be avoided, which generates waste, and requirement of the reagents will be there. So in order to avoid it, we have to reduce that derivatization process. Now the 10th principle is catalysis. Catalytic reagents such as selective as possible. Catalysis, catalytic reagents. Selective as these are almost selective, and these are superior to the stoichiometric reagents. So catalytic reagents should be employed. It makes the reaction faster, decreases the energy requirement, and minimizes the wastage. And almost it is economically also favorable for the industries. Coming to the next principle, catalysis. Catalytic reagents, it is, I have told you, it is selective process and superior to the stoichiometric reagents. So, it's being repeated, the reaction becomes faster, decrease of the energy requirement takes place, can produce a single desired product, minimizes the waste. Now, coming to the next principle, design of the degrading products. Here, designing of the degrading products. Chemical products should be designed so that at the end of their function, they break down into the innocuous degradation products and do not persist in the environment. So, such type of designing should be encouraged. Chemical process should be designed so that at the end of their function, they break down into the innocuous degrading production and do not persist in the environment. Example, polyethylene, polystyrene are not biodegradable. They're not biodegradable, but biodegradable polymer like polyhydroxybutyrate, hydroxyvalerate. Okay, so these I've told you now previously, in Vijayawada we have seen, sorry, in the Vizag, in Andhra Pradesh, Vizag, in the gas leakage, polystyrene gases leaked, it is endangered. So these are not the biodegradable. Their effects are still seen. Polythene, polystyrene, these are not biodegradable. But biodegradable polymer like polyhydroxybutyrate, they're polymers. Polyhydroxybutyrate and hydroxyvalerate, they're biodegradable. Synthetic insecticides remain in the food grains. See, bioconcentration today, nowadays we are talking, they're always going for the search for the purification. So, organic foods, you are generally studying, you are coming across them. So, where the insecticides, the pesticides, everything, they are less utilized for the production. For more production, they have increased usage of the insecticides, pesticides. Okay, so in order to, this bioconcentration is increasing. In order to reduce it, the synthetic insecticides, they remain in the food grains and vegetables and do not get degraded. But natural insecticides, chili, neem, etc., these are good. Even for mango ripening, we are going for the carbide. So you have to avoid that artificial, the synthetic insecticide, the artificial chemicals. Instead, you go for the natural insecticides. So these are easily degradable after killing the insects. Coming to the next principle, new analytical methods or the real-time analysis for population prevention is important. So new analytical methods or real-time analysis for population prevention, new analytical methods or real-time analysis for population prevention. That is one of the principle. Analytical methodologies should be needed for the development to allow for the real-time and in progress monitoring and control prior to the formation of the hazardous substances. Analytical methodologies need to be further developed. So, in order to allow the real-time or in-process monitoring and control prior to the formation of the hazardous substances. And the next point is safer chemicals for accident prevention. Yeah, we have nowadays many examples. Ammonium nitrate in Lebanon, we have seen it has exploded. So safer chemicals should be used in order to avoid the accidents. Analytical substances and the form of a substance used in the chemical process should be chosen to minimize the potential for chemical accidents, including the releases, explosions, and fires. So, safer chemicals should be employed to prevent the accidents. Styrene in the Vizag you have seen. Okay. So, safer chemicals for the accident preventions. These substances and the form of the substance should be utilized in the chemical process. They have to be chosen to minimize the potential for chemical accidents, including the release of explosions or fires. The reagents and reactions should be risk-free in chemical process and to minimize the chemical accident, explosion, fires, and the gas release. I told you the previous examples. So many examples are the Bhopal gas tragedy you can see. So it's all due to the non-usage of the safer chemicals. Yeah, so many examples. Now we'll see what are the efficiency parameters. Efficiency parameters is nothing but one is the reaction yield. So there should be 100% yield of the product. 100% yield or maximum yield should be there. So thereby we can avoid the waste. Okay. That can be percent yield is equal to actual yield by theoretical yield into 100%. Percent yield is equal to actual yield by theoretical into 100%. So you'll be getting the yield percent. The reaction should be high of the yield. Now, atom economy should be 100%. It should be high, maximum. Atom economy, atom efficiency describes the conversion efficiency of the chemical process in terms of all atoms involved and the desired products produced. So 100% atom economy is equal to molecular weight of the desired product by molecular weight of all reactants into 100%. So thereby you'll get the atom economy, which should be maximum or 100%. Let us consider previously explained example. 100% atom economy, you can see allyl phenyl ether, the rearrangement reaction, the breakdown is here and hydrogen is added here. Allyl phenyl alcohol is formed. There is no byproduct formed here. So there is 100% atom economy. One more example already given, butadiene ethene. So here this double bond joins to this carbon, this double bond joins to this carbon and double bond is gone. All the 6 carbons are incorporated in this product. So this is the addition reaction, Diels-Alder reaction, dienophile is added, this addition reaction and a product is formed with no byproducts. 100% atom economy we can see. The third parameter is conversion. So amount of the reactant taken minus amount of reactant consumed by amount of the reactant taken into 100. Or else conversion is equal to amount of reactant reacted by amount of the reaction taking place into 100. You get the conversion and that conversion should be 100%. Now, the fourth parameter is reaction selectivity. Reaction selectivity is equal to amount of desired product formed by amount of product expected on the basis of the reactant consumed into 100. Okay, thereby we can get the reaction selectivity. The best one we can go for the selectivity. 100% atom economy and the product formation we can see if the reaction selectivity is 100%. So environmental load factor, it should be minimum. See here, load factor in the environment, the load factor should be minimum. Till now we have seen everything 100%. Okay, so first one, reaction yield should be 100 atom economy maximum 100, conversion should be 100, reaction selectivity should be good, but the environmental load factor should be minimum. E is equal to total mass of the effluent generated by mass of the desired products into 100. Okay, so that load factor should be minimum. Now, see some of the examples: rearrangement reaction and addition reactions. Butadiene to the ethene we have added, that is addition reaction. And phenyl, allyl phenyl ether, allyl phenol has formed, even that is a rearrangement reaction we have explained, where you can see the atom economy. So in these rearrangement atoms, molecules, hence the atom economy of reactions are 100%. Addition reactions. Yeah, additions, it takes place without any elimination of the molecule. Hence the atom economy can be achieved 100%. Here I'm going to give you some of the examples. Microwave assisted reactions should be used. So these are very good for the green chemistry. So microwave assisted organic synthesis, it is defined as a preparation of desired organic compound from available starting material via same procedure including microwave irradiation. Using the microwave irradiation, we are doing the organic synthesis. It is less hazardous. It is potential tool for the green chemistry. Microwave assisted reactions, it is the potential tool for the green chemistry. Microwave synthesis opens up new opportunities to the synthetic chemist in the form of new reactions that are not possible by conventional heating. This synthesis opens new opportunities to the synthetic chemist, a form new reaction which are not possible by conventional heating. Sometimes this heating may not be possible, but it may be possible in the microwave synthesis. It is an enabling technology for accelerating drug discovery. Very best microwave technology. Enabling technology for accelerating the drug discovery and the development process. Microwave irradiation is non-ionizing form of energy that doesn't alter the molecular structure of compounds, and it provides only thermal activation. Thermal activation can be done by microwave radiation. It is non-ionizing form of energy. It is non-ionizing form of energy. It doesn't alter the molecular structure of the compound, provides only the thermal activation. This phenomenon is dependent on the ability of the specific material to absorb microwave energy and convert into heat. The principle of microwave heating is that the energy can be applied directly to the sample rather than conductively via the vessel. Heating can be started and stopped instantly in this microwave irradiation. So the microwave is form of energy, falls at lower wavelength. The frequency at the end of the electromagnetic spectrum, you can see 300 to, yeah. The frequency, you can see the range. You can see the megahertz range. So it is present between the infrared and the radio waves. 300 to 3 lakhs megahertz frequency range between the infrared and the radio waves. Microwave uses EMR, the electromagnetic radiation. It passes through the material and causes oscillation of the molecules, which produces heat. Okay, microwave, nothing but my very low frequency, 300 to 3 lakh megahertz, very less between the IR and the radio waves. This passes through the material and causes oscillation of the molecules. On oscillation produces the heat. So dielectric heating, generation of thermal energy in non-conducting material by application of the electromagnetic force. Generation of thermal energy in a non-conducting material by application of an electromagnetic force. Wasted energy appears as heat, called dielectric loss. Whatever energy, there is generation of thermal energy in non-conducting material. Generation of thermal energy, you can see in the non-conducting material, so we can see. just by applying the electromagnetic force. Whatever energy that appears as the heat is called dielectric loss. Wasted energy appears as the heat, that is dielectric loss. The non-metallic material with poor thermal conductivity or else non-conducting material also can be very effectively heated by dielectric heating. So non-metallic material which is not having or which is poor thermal conductivity can be effectively heated by dielectric heating. By dielectric heating, any type of substance can be heated, poor thermal conductivity or non-thermal conductivity substance. Dielectric loss is proportional to the frequency and square of the supply voltage. Dielectric loss is proportional to the frequency and square of the supply voltage. This heating mechanism is of two types: dipolar polarization mechanism, conduction mechanism. Now let us compare microwave and the conventional. So conventionally sometimes heating is not possible, by microwave it is. So it increases the reaction rate, first thing. Decreases the reaction rate, conventional. I'm comparing the microwave and the conventional. Actually it increases the reaction rate. In this conventional heating, the rate of the reaction is completely decreased. And the specific material, whatever we want, only that material gets heated. But here the total mixture is getting equally heated and thereby exact heat will not reach to the reacting material. It is specific temperature. There is no specific temperature. Less solvent is used. Here the solvent utilization is more. Efficient internal heating, but this is not an efficient internal heating. Heat flow inside to outside. Heat flow outside to inside. Reverse. Inside to outside it comes and gets heated. But here from outside it comes to inside, but it doesn't get heated properly. So these are so microwave, how nice. Microwave irradiation, microwave assisted, is friendly for the green chemistry. We'll see some of the examples. Hydrolysis we'll see here. Benzyl chloride on hydrolysis. Benzoyl, here O is wrong, it shouldn't be there. BENZYL, benzyl chloride. So this benzyl chloride, out of writing fast, just taken. So this is chlorobenzene. Chlorobenzene on hydrolysis, microwave heating. Okay, so this benzoyl chloride, benzyl. This is not O. There is no O here. Chlorobenzene. Benzyl alcohol is formed. It is not benzoyl. If it is CO, then you have tried benzoyl. Okay, so this is chlorobenzene on hydrolysis, chlorobenzene on hydrolysis, microwave assisted reaction. You will be getting benzyl alcohol, 97%. Next, benzamide, CONH2 is there, amide. So benzamide in presence of sulfuric acid, less solvent, microwave assisted, you'll be getting benzoic acid. So this benzoic acid is formed. Here there is a byproduct, nitrogen. It is liberated outside. Not that harmful. Okay, byproduct. So benzoic acid is formed. This is a micro-assisted reaction. Oxidative reaction. Toluene in presence of aqueous KMnO4 and KOH, microwave assisted for 5 minutes. Benzoic acid is formed, oxidation. Similarly, esterification. Benzoic acid, whatever is formed, again in presence of alcohol, sulfuric acid, microwave assisted, you'll be getting acetyl-phenol. Yeah, buta, yeah. Okay, so this is phenol group. This is propyl. Okay, propyl phenol. Propyl phenol is formed. Similarly, decarboxylation reaction you take. Yeah, decarboxylation 6-methoxy is 1H imidazole to carboxylic acid, imidazole group. 6-methoxy imidazole to carboxylic acid, microwave assistance in presence of quinoline. You are getting the methoxy indole. So this is one more microwave assisted reaction. Now we'll go for the another green chemistry friendly reaction, that is ultrasound mediated reaction. Ultrasound, it is defined as the American National Standards Institute as a sound of frequencies greater than 20 kilohertz. Ultrasound, it can be defined as the American National Standards Institute as sound of frequencies is called ultrasound, which is greater than 20 kilohertz. Ultrasound is a sound waves with frequencies higher than the upper audible limit of the human hearing. Ultrasound is no difference from the normal audible sound in the physical properties, except in the humans, we cannot hear it. Ultrasound irradiation, referred to as a sonochemistry, and is an important tool in the field of organic chemistry. So, microwave assisted and ultrasound mediated reactions are favorable for green chemistry. This technique can be extremely popular in promoting various chemical reactions from 1990 to 99. We have seen. Ultrasound has been useful in accelerating dissolution, enhancing the reaction rates, renewing the surface of the solid reactant, or the catalyst in variety of the reaction systems. And in the recent years, the effect of the ultrasound energies in organic synthesis we have seen homogeneous, heterogeneous reactions. It has widely increased. But two most advantages in the usage of the sonochemistry is organic synthesis. Increase of the reaction rates we can see in the production yields you can see. So this methodology is more convenient when compared to the traditional method, easily controlled. For heterocyclics are not one of the most important organicum because they are involved in many fields of science. Most popular and important heterocycles are one of the very important, important organic reactions due to many fields application. So the usage of the ultrasound in chemical reaction solution specifies specific activation based on the physical phenomenon. Activation. Cavitation is the process in which the mechanical activation destroys attractive forces of molecules in the liquid phase. Applying ultrasound compression of the liquid is followed by rare fraction expansion, in which the sudden pressure drop forms a small oscillating bubbles of the gaseous substances. These bubbles expand with each cycle of applied ultrasound until they reach unstable size. They even collide and violently collapse. Some of the examples: esterification. Here you can see acid and alcohol in presence of catalyst sulfuric acid and the toluene sulfonic acid, tosyl chloride, polyphosphoric acid, dicyclohexyl carbamide, etc. The reaction takes place long time and yields are very low. Saponification can be carried out under the mild conditions using saponification thus methyl 2,4 dibromobenzoate on saponification kilohertz gives corresponding acid in the 94% compared to the 15% by usual process of heating with alkali. Here you can see. Okay, usage of the alkali. So corresponding acid 24% too, compared to 15% by usual process of heating. So a usual process only 15%, but with the ultrasound you can see 94% yield we can see. Okay. So saponification is one of the example. Esterification. Here, ultrasonic sounds gives good yield, but this esterification you see generally so many catalysts in presence of sulfuric acid, toluene sulfonic acid, tosyl chloride, so many solvents are used here, and it takes a long time and the yields are very low. Okay, so this is a conventional way we should avoid, and ultrasonic reactions we can go. Yeah, the saponification, mild conditions using sonification, but you'll get good yields. 94%. Here, conventional method, one example, yield is very less, more solvents used. This is not at all a friendly reaction for the green chemistry. Going for the next reaction, once if you see mild conditions only, at kilohertz, only two chemical solvents, 94% is the yield, and compared to the 15% by usual process of heating. Generally, in conventional method, you'll be getting only 15%, but ultrasonic method, you'll be getting 94%. Okay, so today's class, we have seen general principles, what is green chemistry, examples, some of the incidents, and what is green chemistry, how what it deals, the different principles of the green chemistry were explained, and after the principles, how the microassisted reactions are, it's a good approach for the green chemistry we have seen, and even the parameters, efficiency parameters we have seen. Okay, so microwave assisted we have seen compared to the conventional method, and ultrasonic mediated reactions are also explained. So with the conventional, the yield is low, that is esterification we have seen. With conventional method, more usage of the solvents, it is very low, and with the ultrasonic reaction, the yield is very high. The best examples were explained for you. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have understood my class.